Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers.
All right, Brewer fans, welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast with Craig and Vince. How's it going? The Brewers have now clinched the first team in Major League Baseball to clinch a playoff spot this past weekend on September 13th. What are your thoughts, Vince?
Yeah, it's obviously very exciting. I know that our interns mentioned this on social media. Scotty's interns mentioned this on social media, but it's never to be taken for granted when the Milwaukee Brewers make a postseason or playoff appearance. Craig, you and I are longtime diehard Brewers fans who have been around for the very lean years in Brewers history, and I know that we both well remember the 90s. So not having a playoff team anytime between 1982 and 2008 really reinforces to me just how special it is. And I know that it's a new format for 2025 compared to most of the 80s and 90s, but I do still get really excited just to see the fact that the Brewers are going to be playing postseason baseball, and it's something that I think a lot of prognosticators did not expect at the beginning of the season. Though I will say that the Brew Review did pick the Brewers to win the division, but many in the national media, our colleagues, did not. So it's pretty gratifying for me to see the Brewers overcome some of the preconceived notions that much of the national media had about them going into the season.
Absolutely. And to make your point, I mean, it's not like we're kind of the 90s Braves where we're just expecting to make the playoffs every year. This is still a small market team that keeps losing major players every year via free agency or trade, and they continue to have success. So, I mean, all the kudos has to go to the front office for putting the correct people in place at all levels of the organization. And I think number one is the manager of this Milwaukee Brewers squad, Pat Murphy. Cannot sing his praises much more. Reigning NL Manager of the Year and probably a front runner for this year as well. But to be the Brewers, I think this is the first time in franchise history they've been the first team in baseball to clinch a playoff spot, which is pretty telling as far as how special this team very well could be and is, in my opinion. So that's the exciting part. But going back to your getting used to this or not, just like, okay, well, we made the playoffs, no big deal. We got to do something in the playoffs. The fact of the matter, we've made the playoffs 7 of the last 8 years. I think the one year we didn't make it, we missed out by like a game or two. And that's a run of success. And I know, unlike the Melvin regime, where like we kind of, when it was time to make a run, we kind of put all the chips in the middle of the table and made the playoffs in both 2008 and 2011. I think this regime has been set, and I know that our colleague Scott Bartel did not like how we framed it when David Stearns was in charge. Is like, we just need as many bites of the apple as we can get, because we keep taking bites of the apple, but we never get the full apple, so to speak, even by doing so. So I think, though, that this philosophy is going to breed success and breed some pennants championships at some point soon, because again, once you get into the baseball playoff tournament, it's like one of those things where, and that anything can happen. And I think this year is going to be more so. I mean, is just a example of going in this season. Right now, it looks like it's pretty well determined that the 4 teams that are going to get wild card buys are most likely going to be the Milwaukee Brewers, Philadelphia Phillies, Toronto Blue Jays, and Detroit Tigers. I think 3 of those 4 teams were not even picked to make the playoffs, leaving the Phillies out of that. But I mean, so you just go see, there's no dominant team this year, and I think because of that, once the playoff tournament starts, so to speak, any team could be any other team. I think it's going to make it interesting, but I think having home field advantage for the series, and especially getting the bye past the wild card round, which has been the Brewers' bugaboo since 2018. I think is a huge advantage.
Yeah, I agree with you about the bye. I'm not as convinced about the home field advantage being that important, to be totally frank, but I 100% agree. And I've come around on the first round bye just because the Brewers have shown time and time again that they have a problem here in these, quick series. I know in 2019 it was a one and done, and then the format changed, and then it's the best of 3 series, and even that has not been helpful for the Brewers. So I am very excited about getting some sort of first round bugaboo off of our back one way or another this year.
And of course, there have been fans of these bigger market teams that have had the number one and number two seeds in the wild card buys in the last couple of years since the format has changed. And a lot of those teams actually have gotten bounced by wild card teams on the way to the World Series. And so there's theories out there by fans of saying that extra days off in between the end of the regular season,
Hmm.
which is coming up here on the 28th of September, and then the start of the division series, which is Saturday, October 4th, by the way.
Right.
It,
Right.
that 5, 6, or no, 5 games in between the end of the regular season, that time off sometimes has been a detriment. At least this is, of course, fan speak to the teams. Even
Yeah.
if you can rest up their starters, like they're kind of losing a little bit of the momentum from the season, and they feel, and therefore it's
Hmm.
almost a
Yep.
disadvantage to go past that round. I don't know if I'm necessarily 100% in that camp, but I do see some validity to their theory on that.
Well, that I certainly have been in that camp in the past. I think I've changed my tune just in the sense that I want the Brewers to get past that round and exist deeper into the postseason, obviously. So I think just for the Brewers particularly, I think it's very important to not have to play that first round and to get that bye. I just think that for this team specifically, and that may not be true league wide, I think that the Brewers need to have that, or at least it's very helpful to have that.
So I should point we're doing this podcast on September 15th with exactly 12 games left in the regular season. 6 of them on the road, 6 of them at home, and we finish up at home against the Reds on the last week of the season. Um, the Brewers currently have a 5.5 game lead in the NL Central. The Cubs, of course, own the tiebreaker, so effectively it's a 5 game lead. But with 12 games to play, how confident are you that the Brewers are going to end up winning the NL Central?
I'm pretty confident in that. I know that we've been playing essentially 500 baseball here in September. I think we're a little tired. I think everybody's a little tired though too, and I think that the Brewers. I think that we have a big enough cushion to survive. Not playing at the same level that we were in August, which was obviously a level that was unsustainable. But I think that the Brewers have built up enough cushion that we're going to be able to survive and win the division.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think if the Brewers win at least 4 or 5 of the remaining 12 games, I feel confident that they'll do that. They will not be caught for the NL Central, which is huge. And of course, that'll also mean that we're pretty much locked into the 1 or 2 seed. Now, the Philadelphia Phillies, we do have the tiebreaker over, if our fans are not aware of that, are
Yeah,
just a couple
the Cubs
games
do not
behind
against the
us.
Cubs.
Yeah, a couple games, and again, this is for the number one seed in the NL. At this point, as long
Yeah.
as we win the division, I don't think the Dodgers are for sure the number 3 seed in if they are the third division winner even. We're looks like we're 7 games above them, so I think that's pretty safe. So I mean, as long as we can win the NL Central, I think we're gonna get the 1 or 2 seed. We're currently a couple games ahead of the Phillies for that number one seed. We have the tiebreaker, so essentially it's like a 3 game lead with that much to play. That's a little bit more iffy going whether or not we hold on to that spot. Now, this is where I'm going to point out something to the fans. I think it's important because I'd love to have home field advantage. We also are most likely to have the best record. The NL number one seed is most likely going to have the best record over the AL number one seed. It looks like for most likely. So that also gives us home field advantage all the way through the entire playoffs, including the World Series. And so I think that's also important to grab that number one seed. However, I will say it's interesting, and fans may not be aware of this, but the baseball changed the playoffs a couple years ago where they no longer reseed after the wild card round. What are your thoughts on that, Vince?
Um, yeah, to me, once you get in the postseason and what you call the playoff tournament, it's a good way to describe it. I don't think it matters, to be totally frank. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. I think it's such a crapshoot at that point that I think that whatever format that you have, it all depends on how hot you're playing at that particular moment. What does your pitching look like, and are you able to hit home runs in the postseason? To me, that's what it comes down to. And so I don't necessarily think that the formatting matters a ton, personally.
Yeah, and there's probably some validity to that. Um, and just so Brewer fans are aware, so as the number one seed, the Brewers would play the winner of whoever advances from the top wild card and the second wild card, which at this point it looks like it's almost solidified as being the Cubs and the Padres. So they play the winner of that one in the
Yep.
divisional series. And then the number two seed, if it is the Phillies, would play the winner of the Dodgers versus who's the third division winner versus it looks like it would either be the Mets, Giants, or possibly Reds, but most likely Mets or Giants. So
Yeah.
so again, as a Brewer fan, I'd love to not have to get past both the Phillies and the Dodgers, who I feel are the two best teams besides us in the NL. I also think there's a good chance the Padres could knock off the Cubs in the wild card round, obviously. So, I'd rather, again,
Hypothetically, though, that Cubs Brewers series could be insane. I mean, are you confident? I guess this is kind of an existential question, but are you confident that Milwaukee fans are going to turn out and make sure that Miller Park is filled with actual Brewers fans instead of just having them be another Cubs home game this in a postseason series?
see that is a concern, obviously. But with that being said, would I rather play the Dodgers or the Cubs in the? I mean, again, I'm going to take what I feel is the inferior of the two teams, and other people will probably argue that that's not necessarily the case either. But again, it's one of these things where you don't necessarily want to pick our poison. I think we're going to be happy to have games one, two, and five, if that's the case, at home in the division series, if necessary.
Yeah.
I think that's big. But like you said, if if we don't have a home field advantage because we have to play the Cubs, that's a concern. But I do, like I said,
Yeah,
I
I mean,
do feel
how does the team limit, the access of Cubs fans to get tickets ahead of Brewers fans? I don't know that you realistically can. I know that during the
well, there's
regular
only so
season they
much you
try
can do. I
a
mean,
zip
I think
code. Yeah, they try like a zip code thing, to try to get Brewer fans the ability to purchase tickets first. But then you still have Brewer fans that resell their tickets to Cubs fans for, a profit. So it's tough. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, I do think that the majority of the season ticket holders are willing to sell their regular season seats to Cubs fans to make a profit to pay for their packages. But when it comes to playoff team, then I believe that they keep them for themselves or their fellow Wisconsinites. That's not probably totally true, but I think the vast majority of them do. So to answer your question
Yeah,
in
but
full,
it's not like they sell out this whole stadium every regular season game with season ticket holders either. I mean, you're gonna have a lot of seats that are still available to the general public, which could be bought up quickly by Cubs fans. So I do worry about that a little bit, if I'm being honest.
well, I'm confident it'll be more than 50% Brewer fans, but it would probably seem 50-50. But I think the Brewer
Yeah,
fans would also make a pretty nice showing down at Wrigley, and I think it would feel like 60-40 even for games there. So obviously,
yeah,
since Bud
yeah,
Selig fought to have the Brewers when they switched leagues in the NL Central, having them in having the Cubs a rivalry, I think was forefront of that idea. As our partner is less than 90 minutes to the south, so to speak. Um,
yeah.
I think it's a healthy rivalry, I think, and so I wouldn't shy away from it. But like you said, it is a slight annoyance if you're a Brewer fan and you have a team that seems the home game that seems 50-50 split. But I'm confident the Cubs choking around during the wild card series, and therefore that this is not even be an issue. So
Not that.
we'll
Yeah,
see. You just
fair
never
enough.
know.
I hope so.
You just never know. So getting to the actual team now, because I know we're a little bit limited time here, but the Brewers seem to be setting up their playoff rotation already. Now they've clinched. I saw they moved Woody off of this past weekend. Are now going to be starting him this Wednesday against the Angels. So coming up here, we've got Peralta, Woodruff, and Priester here in the Angels series, which would line up to kind of. My guess is they're
Yeah,
lining up those three guys as our playoff starters for the especially the
yeah.
5 game series. But the Mizorowski, I think, is in that conversation. Quintana would have been in that conversation for that number three or a piggyback spot or whatever. But we would unfortunately have to report that he looks like that he's got an injury. He's getting an MRI. I don't know the results yet, but it's very possible that his services might not be available to us in the postseason.
Our Craig, our anonymous source, Tom Carter, is actually with Jose for the test today, I believe. So we should hopefully get word of that. We'll put it out. Scotty's interns will put that out on social media as soon as we get any results on that.
Okay, yeah, just again, TC or he said we could use whatever information he gives us without giving any credit. In fact, he prefers no credit, but we like to give him credit anyways. So we're
Yeah,
just we're that type of guys, like so. Even if you're asking
yeah,
not to have accolades, we're going to give them to you anyways because you deserve them, Tom Carter. So absolutely. So but.
yeah.
And we appreciate the information, of course. But with that being said, I think that's a real possibility. Again, not knowing. So, and again, even though Mizrowski had that outstanding outing against the Pirates, I think his youth and his lack of experience, I guess I'll just put that way, makes him less likely to be one of those top three starters for a playoff series. What
I
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I know I tend to agree with you, Craig, but I don't look at it as being a negative thing like, oh, youth and inexperience, and that might be the case, but that's not how I look at it. I look at it more as, wow, this is a huge power arm that can start or relieve, but you put him in of the playoffs, it really doesn't matter. You've got, whether it's 1 inning or a 3 inning stint, starting in the fourth, you still have a guy that can come in, throw 103 miles an hour, and enough season that he can go multiple innings out of the bullpen if you need him to. And you could bring him in for one as like a power arm out of the bullpen. You could bring him in, again for 3-4 innings even out of the bullpen if you wanted to. So I think that just because of that versatility and because of his particular strengths as a pitcher, I think that's a really real plus. So I don't look at it like, oh, Mizorowski doesn't deserve a spot in the rotation because he's young and inexperienced. I think of it more like his tool set, I think, makes more sense. Not long term. I'm not saying like in 2026, but for the postseason, I think that it makes more sense that Mizorowski be an arm out of that bullpen than it does somebody like Peralta or Priester or Woodruff or something. So to me, that's why. So I agree with you, but probably for different reasons.
Yeah, and of course, don't get me wrong, Brewer fans. The Brewers he will be making the postseason roster. He's an all-star, and he will be contributing to the team in some fashion during the playoffs. Um, but like I said, with Priester still has an unbelievable streak going. I think is it up to 17 now? 17 of his last starts that the Brewers have won all of them. He hasn't, of course, got a
Yeah.
decision on all of them, but it's a pretty remarkable
Right.
streak. Woodruff again coming back from a major surgery. I mean, everyone's just rooting for the guy. He's the guy that I think everyone trusts with the ball. With that being said, I do agree with them kind of like limiting his starts down the stretch here, and making sure that he's healthy because he's really essential at this point. I think our depth is starting to thin out here, and of course, Freddie Peralta is having, I'd say, probably a top five NL Cy Young Award season here. Is definitely, in my
Yep.
opinion, going to be handing the ball in game one of any playoff series. But that's what I believe at least. But again, I would trust anyone in our top three or four pitchers to take that ball in game one of an important series. So, yeah,
Yeah, and I do think it remains to be seen, obviously, the extent of the injury, but Jose Quintana did walk off, the mound yesterday, or he, couldn't finish what he wanted to do because of an injury. He did wear a cast or a boot last night following the game. I'm a little worried that he is going to be out for the duration of the postseason, and I do think that could hurt the Brewers quite a bit. He's obviously struggled a little bit, I would say, in the last 3-4 weeks, especially, but I do think that not having that left-hander with experience, whether that was going to be out of the pen or as a starter, I think that is going to hurt a little bit. I know we have other left-handed options coming out of the pen, but I really do like his postseason experience just over the course of his career. And obviously, it worked for him against us last year when he was with the Mets. But I do hope that the Brewers can overcome that injury. I do think that it could be a factor, unfortunately.
yep. So we'll see what we get from our anonymous source as far as information on that. A couple other injury notes and news here. Trevor McGill was rumored to want to come off of the IL tomorrow, which is the 16th. However, he apparently had a bullpen session over the weekend that he did not recover that well from, according to Pat Murphy, and therefore he may not be back this week. However, I'm fairly confident that he is going to be available here in the last week of the season and maybe get some innings in before postseason, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we get our all-star closer back for the postseason because I think that's a huge need for this team, especially with Shelby Miller now being out for the season. Um, Nick Mears also is on the IL with an injury as well as DL Hall. I think both those guys' injuries are minor enough that I think that they're going to be back before the end of the season. Hopefully, to get a couple innings in pitch so that they show their health. Also, another guy who has not pitched for us yet this year is also returning from injury. Who I would love if the Brewers can clinch by next weekend, which I feel that they will, the NL Central that is. And again, they'll still be fighting for that number one seed, but I would like them to possibly give Robert Gasser coming back from injury a start or so in the last week of the season, if possible, to see what he has and whether or not he could possibly be a candidate to make the postseason roster, especially down a couple, being down if Quintana is out. I feel like another lefty on the postseason roster would be good. But again, given that him coming back from injury, maybe that's a tough ask. But I still have high opinion of Robert Gasser. I'd love to see him show, and he's had a nice little minor leagues comeback so far. So I think that he's shown enough health at AAA this year that he could be a contributor here down the stretch. But we shall see.
Yeah, I was going to say he has regained his health. I mean, he's back and he's pitching. He might not be in the big leagues, but he's pitching well for Nashville, and certainly in his limited big league debut season last year in 2024, he pitched great. I loved watching him pitch. Got a chance to see him here in Houston. I think he pitched in 5 or so games last year and posted a sub 3 ERA. Picked up a couple wins if I recall. So it's he would certainly be an addition. He's always had top prospect stuff to me. He was the headliner on our end, I think, in the Josh Hader trade in 2022. So he is certainly somebody that the Brewers organization values highly because he's done nothing in his minor league career, but I think increase his value to the organization outside of the injuries, which you can't control. So if he's back from injury, I'm all for giving him not only a start in the regular season, but potentially even adding him to the postseason roster as well.
Yep. Another player returning from injury is Rhys Hoskins, who's now back at the big league level. Now, Andrew Vaughn has fallen a little bit back down to earth here as of late. Obviously, he had an incredible run his first month plus as a Milwaukee Brewer. And again, I think he's definitely going to be a vital part of the middle of our lineup postseason wise. But I think it's important to get Rhys Hoskins some major league at bats, and he's likely going to be on the major postseason roster as well. Even if it's in a bench role or a platoon. I was a little surprised, even with Hoskins back, that we've been giving lots of starts at first base to Jake Bauers down the stretch here, too. And again, usually in a platoon role as a left-handed hitter, we've been starting against right-handers, but that's the heavy side of a platoon. So, I mean, I feel Jake Bauers, because he can play the corner outfield too, that he'd make the postseason roster as well. So, I mean, I'm all for getting him at bats, but how do you think, how challenging as a manager for Pat Murphy is it to get each of these three first basemen at bats going down the stretch and into the postseason?
Well, I mean, I think it was Harry Dalton who said that's not a problem. That's a good issue to have. You've got three guys that can step up and play that position. I do think that Jake Bauers has been hitting so well. It's very hard to keep him off the field, let alone the roster. I mean, he is hit in the minor leagues during his rehab assignment coming back from injury. He's hit in the majors since he's been activated, and he's been hotter than Rhys. Now, that's not to take away from Rhys, and certainly not to take away from Rhys's heroics in past postseasons for Philadelphia. But Jake Bauers also has the biggest home run in postseason history for the Milwaukee Brewers, probably as well. Outside of it being a bad end result of that game, Jake Bauers would be, a living legend in franchise history if the Brewers would have indeed won that series against the Mets. So, it's very hard for me to keep that guy off the roster. That being said, if you keep all three of Vaughn, Hoskins, and Bauers, that probably, just the math of this, it probably means that Monasterio doesn't make the postseason team. And some, might say, okay, so what? But that really does limit the team's versatility. And you see a guy like Monasterio really give the team great at bats. Just this last series against the Cardinals just being one example. So, I'm not saying that Andrew Monasterio should necessarily make the team over Rhys Hoskins. I'm just saying that is something that the Brewers really do need to consider, as they go forward into setting playoff rosters.
Yeah, and again, we're still a couple weeks into the regular season, so we don't want to break down too much the exact postseason roster, but we have made it, so this is something we can discuss. And I agree with you. I think Andrew Monasterio has earned his right to be on the team, and especially with the depth. If something happens to Ortiz in a game, I think we really need Monasterio on a postseason roster. So I think he's almost a shoe-in, which, yeah, again, maybe they're trying to figure out who to leave off if it is going to be one of Vaughn, Hoskins, and Bauers. And you would think, well, Vaughn's a shoe-in, and I do believe that, but you just never know. I mean, so I think there's a real possibility that Rhys Hoskins could actually be left off the postseason, right? If I had to be a guessing.
Well, I think so too.
Yeah. Sorry, so I mean, it seems shocking with his veteran experience and his actual postseason prowess as a member of the Phillies or whatnot to keep someone like a bat like that. So hopefully we can squeeze him in, maybe even with one less arm or something. I don't know, but But especially in a shorter series, I think you could probably get by with one less arm, especially with we have the advantage of having guys like Ashby and maybe in this situation, Mizrowski can cover multiple innings. I think maybe someone like Grant Anderson or someone like that could be left off instead, and in deference to a bat, if I had to guess. So we'll see how it all
Possibly.
plays out. What's
And
that?
I like Rhys Hoskins a lot, but I do think that it's worth pointing out that the postseason prowess that he's shown in the past, I think, was kind of based on one huge, maybe a couple big games. And again, this is not to
Yeah.
disparage Reese, but he has a 141 batting average in his postseason career and a 193 OBP. Scotty's interns are hitting me the notes right now, so it's not like he's
He's not
Babe
Mr.
Ruth in the
October. Got it.
No, and I'm not saying that to rip on him because hitting in the postseason is hard. You're facing the best pitchers by definition, around baseball, and so it's not an easy thing to do. And there's limited small sample sizes for all these things. Those are numbers based on 20 total postseason games. So it's not like he's played 50 games or something. And so anyways, I don't say that to disparage Reese. I just say that just to point out it's not like it's just such a clear cut decision, and it is a tough decision. It's something that I'm sure the Brewers brain trust has been working on and will continue to work on, but I don't think that it's a slam dunk in any direction.
Yeah.
And I will also say this, Greg, too. Brew Review, as you know, we were on the scene in Arlington, Texas for the Brewers Rangers series, and we did see during pregame batting practice and infield practice that two of the games, they didn't take infield all 3 games. So the two games that they did, they had Andrew Vaughn actually working out at third base. So
Interesting.
that was something that we witnessed ourselves in Arlington that didn't obviously translate to in-game experience, but I saw with my own eyes Andrew Vaughn taking rounders at third base several games down in Arlington.
Interesting. And of course, for all the Brewer fans that haven't been paying that close attention, Isaac Hollins, a Rookie of the Year candidate for this year in the NL, also not only got some practice reps at third, but he actually played some in-game innings at third base as well. So that increases his flexibility. So again, it's a luxury for the Brewers to be able to make these kind of set up their postseason roster and get some guys some experience, possibly as for roster flexibility when we hit and I think we have a really nice deep team. So one other thing I want to talk about a game from just 2 days ago, September 13th, the game against the St. Louis Cardinals. The Brewers were down 6-1 at one point. They kept battling back and they ended up winning this game in extra innings, 9-8, I believe was the final.
Yep.
And this game, in my opinion, and people wrote it, whatever, but it was the epitome of the 2025 Milwaukee Brewers, this game, because they did not hit any home runs. I think they had like 4 of their runs came on outs, which is again a staple of manufacturing runs that this team is unbelievable at with their speed and their
little infield like single by Contreras of all people. Yeah, I mean it was just like little dinks.
Yep.
But it works because you put yourself in that position to have guys, in scoring position, and you put the ball in play and you don't strike out and you
great
don't
defense.
Play great defense.
Great,
you don't give
great
up
base running.
Yeah, good base running. Yeah.
And battling with the bat. I mean, that's what it comes down to is these guys saw a lot of pitches, they put balls in play, and they make the other team make mistakes, and that's exactly what happened. And this game, and not only that, but they don't quit. The team does not quit. They were down 6-1. Now, this is a game where they basically, over this week, earlier that day, the Brewers had actually clinched a playoff spot. They did not need to win that game to celebrate. But with all that being said, they battled all the way to the very last pitch of the game, and that is something that I think is what makes this team special, in my opinion. So.
I agree. And, we saw that. And one other point on that, too. I think that the last hitter of the game, the walk-off, was hit by Andrew Monasterio. And he is probably, the last guy off the bench, quite frankly, in terms of offensive performers. He's somebody that, the team isn't counting on to necessarily get the big hit. It's not Bryce Terang, it's not Jack Trurio, and it's not Christian Yelich or Sal Frelick is my point. And you've got a guy who still battles the way that Monasterio did. I think it was an 11-pitch at bat. I'll have Scotty's intern verify that, but I think it was an 11-pitch at bat. I think he would have extended it. He had another at bat recently. It was like 14 pitches or something like that. He just, this is the last guy on your bench, and he still buys into this team mentality to put up these very consistently good like just good from a baseball skill set at bat that leads to good positive outcomes a good chunk of the time. And it's not like you're going to get a hit every time in that circumstance just by, fouling off 8 pitches or whatever you did. But I know that you put yourself in a better position to have a better outcome. And I know that Monasterio has bought into the Pat Murphy Brewers philosophy. And it's pretty exciting.
Absolutely. And again, there's something special about this team that they're all friends. You saw them, like some footage of them hanging out at a football game together this past week. And you can tell when they do the
Yeah,
walk-off.
apparently they're all Packers fans, Craig. Apparently they're all Packers fans.
Yeah.
But
We'll
our
not be
co-host,
joining them with
Scott,
that. But
happy.
I mean, the bottom line is that all these guys, you can tell how excited they are when they have the walk-offs and how they just love being teammates with one another. I think that makes a huge part of the team chemistry. And after that game on Saturday, I actually coined my own phrase for the 2025 Milwaukee Brewers, and that is I'm calling them the 5'8" fighters. And again, not to make fun of their height, but I think we have at least like
I don't know if that's going to stick, Craig. I think Woodpeckers is better. That's what Murphy calls them.
That works for me. But anyway, again, just kind of pointing out that at least half dozen of guys, the team are under the 5'10", I think at least. But anyway, and again, that's the beauty of baseball is you can be any size or shape and still be successful in this game, unlike some other sports, which I think is really awesome. So, all right, before we quick wrap this up,
what was the phrase of John Kruk? I'm not an athlete. I'm a baseball player, lady.
It's awesome. But all right, before we wrap it up here, Vince, let's do our last predictions. 12 games left in the season. The Brewers currently sit at 91 wins. The franchise record has been equaled twice at 96 wins. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Will Milwaukee Brewers finish the 2025 season with the best record in franchise history?
I think that we tie it. I think we tie it. I don't think that we're pushing for that. I don't think that it necessarily matters, to be frank. I mean, it does in the sense that we want to lock down that bye in the first round. So, but I don't think that the guys are necessarily thinking about the franchise mark. So I'll say we tie it.
Okay. So then with the 96 wins, do you predict we will be the number 1 or number 2 seed in the NL?
Number 2. I think the Phillies are hot right now. Yeah,
I'm going to stick with 97 wins to break that record and that they do secure the number 1 seed. But we'll see. But they'll be exciting last.
I hope so. I'm pulling for it. I'm absolutely pulling for it. I hope that you're right. It could certainly happen that way for sure. And I do think that, the Phillies have just been playing really hot. Their last stretch has got me convinced that, I do think that they're the team to beat. I'm not saying that they're better than the Brewers. The Brewers have handled them very well this year. My point with saying that is that I think that they are the biggest competitor in the National League, I guess, is the Phillies. To me, they're the most talented. They were my preseason pick to win the pennant in the National League, and I think that the Brewers have proven the doubters wrong. And we've certainly played the Phillies very well. I just think that's the team that scares me the most.
Absolutely. And that's why I think I'm really excited about us having either the number 1 or the number 2 seed locked down, because that means the Phillies getting the other of the two. We will not have to face them until the NLCS at the very soonest. And I think that's very key because, like I said, I think they're the second best team in baseball behind the Milwaukee Brewers. And we'll prove it to them this postseason. So that's my prediction. But all right.
That sounds great.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, listeners. Again, this has been a magical season with a very special team, the 2025 Milwaukee Brewers. So thanks for always tuning in and getting your updates here from us. And we hope everyone the best of health as we wrap up the 2025 regular season and head into the postseason with a strong, healthy team ready to do something special.
Yeah, and we'll come at you again soon. Hopefully next week, Craig, we can do another show depending on Scotty and Chad's schedules, obviously, but we'll tape another episode very soon.
Absolutely. So, all right. Well, stay classy, Wisconsin, and go Brewers.
All right. Thanks, Craig. Go Brewers.